Well, here we are. Okay, so yeah, there's a bit of a confusion apparently about this class. In fact, the whole fall semester, there was some confusion about whether we would be back in person or not. So just to be on the safe side, I asked that all the classes that I'm teaching be online.
Wait, are we in the same class right now?
What was going to happen. So anyway, we're going to be meeting online for the entire semester. That's not going to change. And yeah, I know maybe it's not the ideal situation, but I think we're all pretty much used to it by now. So, we'll just have to put up with it one more semester. And so in the meantime, then I did send out the invitations yesterday or last night. So the idea here is that every time we have a class, I'll be sending out the invitations, hopefully within 24 hours of the meeting. Very occasionally I do forget, but since this class meets at 10:30 in the morning, if I forget, I'll just send it out like 8 or 9 in the morning. So you'll definitely get it, but I will try very hard to get it to you the day before, let's say, just, so there's no doubt in your mind about what we're doing. So now, if there's a problem with the emails, very occasionally there's an issue. I've had this happen where, for whatever reason, my email account simply refuses to communicate with somebody else's email account. Then maybe we can find another email account to use. But basically, I used my own personal Gmail account, if you've noticed, just because it's easier to send out a bulk email rather than using Purchase's email account, which doesn't handle that type of thing very well. It almost forces you to do one email address at a time, which is very awkward in a class of this size. So you can expect to receive the invitations from my Gmail account. But when it comes time to writing back, you can use either my Purchase account or my Gmail account. Usually it's better if you send it anything you need to my Purchase account, only because I have a lot less emails in my Purchase account, and it's easier for me to see them. In other words, if you send an email to my Gmail account, it's going to get mixed in with a lot of others, and it's possible I could overlook it. So it might be easier if you write to my Purchase account, but either one is fine. Okay, so what are we doing in this class? Well, first of all, why don't we do this? Let's go to Moodle. And you can see I've been setting it up so that everything is ready for us. So if you go into the Moodle for macroeconomic theory, you'll see that as we speak, there's a syllabus here. There's also 3 chapters, and there's a problem set for chapter 3. So I don't think I've made any announcements yet. I'll put that together later on. Just a brief overview.
Robin.
Yeah, we got to be careful with those old microphones. Very occasionally, people say things they shouldn't when they don't realize the microphones are on. Hold on one second. I think I can turn them off, but I have to find the one that's not off. Wow, this is very awkward. All right, well, anyway, it seems to have stopped. All right, so anyway, so here's the syllabus. So let's take a quick peek at the syllabus. Let's see. So it's the usual standard information. We have all my information is here. The telephone number's here. Now, given that it's an online class, you can't just drop by my office because I won't be in there. I'm not even sure what they're doing about that. I keep reading messages from the school about testing for COVID and all this and that, and I'm not sure what they've decided to do, but I'll be online, of course, instead of in my office. So you probably shouldn't call this number unless it's really urgent. Most matters that you need to address can be taken care of with emails. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. And like I said, you can either use my Purchase account or my Gmail account, which you just received the Zoom's invitation from. There's a book for this class. Now, it's not very expensive, as far as I can tell. It's a soft cover, and it's only for macroeconomics. Now, a lot of economics textbooks, basic economics textbooks typically are written so that there's one half dedicated to macroeconomics and one half dedicated to microeconomics. And of course, if you're taking both halves of that class, that's fine. That works out beautifully. But if you're not, or if there's a chance that you're not, the textbook authors got smart somewhere along the way, and they made it possible for you to buy just the macro part or just the micro part. So for us, this is the macro part. And if you do find yourself taking the micro half, then you can get the other part later on. But for us, this is what we need. So it's not terribly expensive by textbook standards. It's a very good book. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you have to buy it. All of the course materials are on PowerPoint slides, which I have adopted obviously from the book. So you're not required to have this book, but if you really are seriously thinking about majoring in economics, you might want to get your hands on it just because it really covers all these topics in a very interesting and meaningful way, but also because you might need it for some of your other classes. Okay, so I'll leave that decision up to you, but yes, all of the notes for this class are actually on PowerPoint slides, which we'll be using as we go along. So now, of course, this is intended to be an introduction to the field of economics. It's possible that you've already had some economics in your travels. Some high schools do teach economics, or at least they introduce you to it. Some of them don't, okay? And I think that's a terrible mistake. I mean, I can hardly imagine a topic that is more important to your lives than economics. So I really think the high schools are behind the times in some cases, and maybe they should all start adding a little more economics because this is going to help you throughout every aspect of your life. Now, it's possible also that you've already had the basic micro course. As a matter of fact, I might as well ask you, now I know it's possible to do this. Even though your microphones are off, you can turn them on if you want to answer a question. Has anyone here already taken the basic micro class? Okay, so, all right, so we got somebody raising their hand. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means. You can go ahead and just verbally say your answer, or you can send it to the chat room.
I have not taken.
Okay, has anybody, oh, is that right? That was supposed to mean yes? I did not know that. You see, technology is not my thing, as you'll discover as we go along. No, the only reason I'm asking is because with basic micro and basic macro, okay, this is good. This is good information. The first 3 or 4 chapters typically overlap with each other. So in other words, if you've had basic micro, the first 3 or 4 chapters in this book will already be somewhat familiar to you, which is not the worst thing in the world. But, in other words, I don't want you to panic and think, oh my God, have I accidentally signed up for basic micro again? No, just be aware the first few chapters will be the same or very similar. And then after a while, we'll move off into a completely different direction from micro. What's different between micro and macro is with micro, you're focusing on individual decision-making units. In other words, individuals, households, individual businesses, that type of thing. How do they make decisions about what to produce, what to consume, how much money to save, how much to spend? Macro is different. It's more of a big picture type of thing. Oh, yes. So in high school, if you did have some high school, they probably introduced you to a little bit of both because they wouldn't have had enough time to get too deeply into either one of them. And that's fine. I mean, I'm glad because that way you've already have some familiarity with these concepts. It's a little tricky, obviously, when you have a class where everything is completely new. So it's good to have a little background, but of course, we'll be taking this to a higher level than you did in high school. But yes, so anyways, I started to say macro is more of a big picture look at the economy. So what you'll recognize as we go along is that if you have read in the internet any economic or financial news, you'll start to recognize that a lot of the discussion that they have about what's going on in the real world is based on what we're doing in this class. Okay, so let me just show you an example of this. If you really want to start keeping up with economic and financial news, there's many excellent websites. For example, Here's CNBC.com. Now, this is really meant more for investing, but they do have a lot of information here about what's going on in the economy. Like stocks obviously is going to be the top headline here, but there's a lot of other information here about what's going on in the world. But they also have articles about business and investing, and a lot of this is really more or less straight ahead economics. If you're really even more interested and just want to really dive into the economics, there's a great journal, British journal, as a matter of fact, called The Economist. And they really are incredibly outstanding. It is a British publication, and the advantage to that is that there's a lot more focus on what's going on outside of the United States. Okay, so in other words, an American journal is going to focus almost exclusively on the United States, which is fine. But if you want to know what's going on, let's say in Europe or in Asia, then this is probably a better choice, because they do cover everything, and they do it in a very clear way. In other words, they're writing these articles with people in mind who are not specialists. So they try very hard to avoid overwhelming you with technical details. They're writing these articles with the assumption that you don't really have a lot of background in economics, but you just want to learn more. And so this is a great source for all kinds of articles about economics, something that you might want to look into. And of course, we have the classic Wall Street Journal, which is obviously available online, just like all the rest. The only problem with the Wall Street Journal is I believe you have to pay for it. They are capitalists after all. And so therefore, they will, expect you to pay them for these articles, but they'll make it very cheap for you if you're a student, and they'll cover the news every day in great detail. And, they really do an excellent job of explaining what's happening in the economy. Anyway, and there's others too. I mean, there's actual, like, for example, there's Forbes. Forbes without a T. This is it used to be a monthly magazine. I don't know if they even still have monthly magazines, but this is more focused on investing. Then we have Fortune, the same thing. But you can find all this information. But what the point of all this is that if you're going to be reading these websites, a lot of the discussion will come down to topics that we will talk about in macroeconomics. Okay, for example, inflation, which is in the news now a lot. Why? Because all of a sudden, after decades of low inflation, suddenly inflation is waking up again and becoming a serious problem. Or, for example, GDP, gross domestic product, the amount of goods and services that the country produces every year, which is an excellent measure of standards of living. Our focus here is on how quickly is the economy growing. And if it grows quickly, our standards of living can rise and we'll all be pretty happy. If it rises a little too quickly, though, we have to be concerned about inflation. If it doesn't rise fast enough, then we can find ourselves in a nasty recession. So it's an important idea, and one that you'll see discussed a great deal in the press. Of course, unemployment is something that's always an important topic. We also have more of a focus down here on money and finance. And ultimately, we'll find ourselves studying the Central Bank of the United States, which you may or may not know is called the Federal Reserve System. And the Fed, as it's called, is an important player in the economy because they're the ones who ultimately choose the level of interest rates that we use to borrow or lend money. So these are all like I said, the big picture topics, but they're all based on basically microeconomic principles. In particular, probably the most important concept in all of economics, which is supply and demand. So in other words, in a course like this, we don't want to assume that you've already had basic micro. So we will start with some basic micro concepts and then work our way up to macroeconomics. And then that's what we'll do for the rest of the course. All right, so like I said, and like as we're going through this material, it may seem a little bit abstract at times, but if you are keeping up with the news, you'll realize pretty quickly that these topics are very important to understand what's happening in the real world. Now, exams. This is an online class. I don't know enough about the technology to make elaborate online exams, which, you may have already experienced this. It's actually possible to have exams that are not only online, but they're timed. So you only have so much time to finish. And not only that, but in some schools, you've probably heard about this, they actually have a system where there's a camera watching you the whole time. We're not going to do any of that here. Has anyone here actually been in a class like that, where not only is your exam timed, but you actually have cameras watching you? Has that happened to anybody here?
No, that's not happened to me.
No, I know people from other schools, and this has happened. Yeah, that's no kidding. Really? Professor Aikita does that? Wow. And then, yeah, no, you'd be shocked. It actually, what it's trying to do is make sure that you're not like looking up the answers on your cell phone or something like that. The problem though is that, like, what if you just happen to sneeze or something? Or what happens if somebody calls you and you turn your head, or, that's the kind of thing that I think is a little much. So we're going to do the opposite approach. All of our exams are just straight ahead take-home exams. In other words, it'll be on Moodle, and you'll print it out and you'll work on the problems and you'll send them back to me when you're done. And I'll grade them. And that's how it's going to work. Okay, it couldn't be more straightforward. And that way you'll have all the time you need. And but because you're doing it at home on with your books right in front of you, the nature of the questions will be a little bit more towards thinking about what you're doing rather than memorizing details. Okay, so in other words, that's the trade-off. The focus of the questions might be a little different, but you'll be able to do this all at home. Oh yeah, that's a good question. What I've had people do in the past is, if you have a scanner, a printer, most printers these days have scanners, you can scan it back into PDF, and that's fine, and email it. A lot of students just take pictures of their answers with their cell phones and send them back. And that works well up to a point, because the quality of phones today is quite good. But the problem is sometimes the files are very large, and that can be an issue. So, and yes, that's a good point. There do exist scanner apps, and in the past, some of the students used them and the quality was really, really good. So we'll have this conversation as soon as our first exam comes along. And in fact, you may have to help me figure out what are the best scanner apps, because it doesn't really matter as long as I can read them. That's honestly the only consideration. If I can read it, it's fine. That is a problem. You got to watch that though. Some people take pictures. Let's just say some people's picture taking skills are not the best. And sometimes they'll take a picture and there's so much glare that I can't read it. So my only interest is that I can read what you've done. All right, that's the bottom line. But again, we'll figure this out when the exams roll around, but I don't see this being a problem. Oh, that's right. I think I've heard of that one, Genius Scan. In fact, I may have it on my phone here. Hold on. I don't actually use it, but I need to know about it. Oh, it's here somewhere. All right. Well, again, we'll figure this out as we go along, but I'm going to make a note of this somewhere. Genius Scan. See, this is one of the advantages of having a college class. You guys can help me with the technology, because I'm pretty hopeless with technology. I'm going to admit it right up front. I try my best, but I'm not terribly successful with it. Well, I need access. No, just send it to me and I'll just, well, yeah, see, one of the awkward things about doing this online is it's hard for me to tell you, like, I can't physically write on your, it's not easy like it is writing on Blue Books. I I just need a picture of your work. That's all I need. So anyway, so yes, so let's not spend all day talking about this because yes, we'll figure this out, but it hasn't been a problem in the past, except like I said, for the occasional documents that are too large or that I can't read. We'll figure that out. All right, anyway, so I'll let you know when the tests are. There won't be any surprises. It won't come as a sudden shock. And when I do have one, you'll have at least a week to do it because that should be plenty. Now, oh, it does say here attendance. The school expects you. Now, here's the thing about attendance with an online class. The school expects you to attend these classes, but because it's online, really realistically, what we're hoping is that you'll either show up in the obviously during the live sessions, but also if you cannot make it at all, I mean, you just can't do it. All of these classes are being recorded. And what's going to happen is that the Moodle itself, I've been told by the school that Moodle is not really designed to hold a lot of videos. It doesn't seem to have enough storage capability. So what I've been doing is using my own personal YouTube account. Let me just open it up for you. And so each session will be recorded and then I will put it in a special playlist. Let's see. Okay, here we go, playlists. So I created one yesterday for one of my other classes. Here it is, Math 1060 for the fall of 2021. And oops, no, I just wanted to look at the list. Here it is over here. So all of the recordings for this class will be in your own special playlist. It'll just say Economics 1500, fall 2021. And then you can just go look at it and you can watch it like any other YouTube video. It works well. I have never really had any issues with it. And so that option is on the table. If you can't come to the regular session, you can just watch the video. But now here's the thing. It's easy to get behind if you do that. In other words, you want to make sure that you do watch it pretty soon because otherwise suddenly it's the next class and you didn't catch on to what we were doing before. So if you do miss the class, try to make sure you watch this within a couple of days. Otherwise you'll start to fall behind. And yeah, so, you can, this is just your usual video and nothing special, just, by the way, you know what, talking about technology, does anybody here use YouTube a lot? Is on a regular basis? No. All right. No, because I was informed yesterday that you can actually do, oh, here it is, closed captioning. I'm going to try to investigate closed captioning because you never know when somebody might need it. But all right, I'll work on that some other time. All right, now, what else do you need to know? So, 3 exams will be your grade. Let's see. So basically, all you have to do is keep up with the material and do well on the 3 exams and you'll be fine. And this is all, the language that the school expects me to put in there. You can read it if you want. But all right, I think that's enough discussion about the syllabus. And wow, this is a very chatty group. I've just realized. Normally I only get 1 or 2 during a class, and all of a sudden I'm getting tons of them. So I just realized I have to keep up with this stuff. Oh, if you can't make it, I mean, yes, as a courtesy, you can send me a quick email and that's fine, but it's not mandatory. But yes, I would appreciate that. If you write to me and say, listen, I can't be there on Friday because of X reasons, or just I can't be there, that helps me keep track of who's here, because the school does at some point expect me to tell them if anybody is not either coming to class or watching the videos. And so if you let me know when you're missing, that makes it easier for me to keep track of this. Okay, so I would appreciate it, but if you forget, it's not the end of the world. Let's put it that way. Okay. So yeah, I have no idea what this is all about. Oh, here we go. No, what we're going to do is we will have practice problems, but I will not correct them. They're just for your sake to get you ready for the exams. So the actual grading just comes from the exams. Now, if you need help, that has to be arranged separately because obviously there's no office hours as such. But you know, it's possible to have a Zoom conference at any time that's convenient for myself and the student. It just has to be arranged, that's all. Okay. A lot of times an email is probably sufficient, but if that's not enough, you can send me an email and say, can we have a one-on-one conference on Zoom? And that can certainly be arranged very easily. Okay, so you don't have to feel like you're on your own because you're not. Okay. That's yeah, we don't want any of that. Oh my God, there's even more messages. Oh yeah, that's another good point. Somebody mentioned to me that they're having issues logging in. Technology is not. Now, I'll admit that I'm not a technology person, but I'm also going to say that technology is not as reliable as we generally think it is. Especially email, I've discovered. Email can be a real problem. I wouldn't depend ever on email. You should double check everything you do by email. If you have issues getting in, just let me know. And if you literally are unable to get into the class, you can just tell me and just go ahead and watch the video. But at the same time, though, if it's a consistent problem, we may want to find a way to get it fixed. Because it's hard to tell what the problem is when this doesn't work. It might be your internet connection, it might be Zoom itself. So if you do have problems, you should let me know and I will discuss it with the school's tech people. Okay, they do have people who can work on this stuff. I personally don't know anything about it, but I can find people who can help us. Okay. Okay. I don't know what Twitch is. Okay, so we'll ignore that one. It does. Okay, well, I'll take your word for that. Just keep in mind, you must never assume that I know anything about the technology. Certainly, for the love of God, do not use abbreviations. You know what I mean? Those three, like a lot of times when people are texting, they send they're not even typing words anymore, like LOL, perfect example. That one I know. And you know what? That's the only one that I know. That's it, the extent. By the way, is there a special name for those things that when you have letters like that? Okay, now here's one that I'll never figure out. LMAOAOAO. It might as well be Russian because I have no idea what that is. So try to avoid doing that when you send. Okay, I do know ASAP. All right, I'll give myself credit for that. I know ASAP, and I know lol. Oh, all right. See, no, you had to tell me. And these little pictures, the faces. I mean, I know that they exist, but I don't know when you're supposed to use them. And I know there's shortcuts that can create them, but you know what? I'm too far out of the technology loop. So try to remember that when you send me emails or messages. XD, it's a mystery to me. Oh, well, look at those dollar signs in your eyes. Yes, I like that. XD sideways, huh? Oh boy. It's not like there's someplace on the internet where you can go look these things up, is there? Like, is there a website that says, here's all the abbreviations you ever wanted to know? Burb. There has to be, but I don't know where it is. So I'm pretty helpless. :D. What do you suppose that means? Ah. All right. Yeah, go ahead. No, I can use one. It's like an English abbreviation dictionary. Oh, I will. No, I've done this many times in the past, especially when I'm there in person. Like I have an iPhone and I use it, but there's a lot of mysteries in there for me. And so I know from experience, any random person in my class can answer any question I have about iPhones. It's pretty amazing. Except maybe, no, here's one maybe you don't know about. Sometimes you never know what you might stumble into. Calculators. If let's say now we're not doing a lot of hardcore calculations in this class. If anything, we're doing more graphs. But if you find that you do not have a proper calculator, you can just go right here. And there's a surprise waiting in here for you. Now, oh, there's so much glare. Look, there's a calculator there, and you may have seen it, but here's the surprising part. When you hit it on, you click on the calculator, it's just this very rudimentary calculator. It's as basic as it gets. But watch what happens when you turn it sideways. All of a sudden, it's a full-blown scientific calculator. How many of you knew that? Oh, okay. Well, now you know you have this high-powered tool in your pocket at your disposal anytime you need it. In fact, we use it all the time in my Math for Contemporary Life class. So guess what? There's one piece of technology that I knew about that you didn't. So it's, yeah, just in case you need it, or if you forget your calculator, it's always right there at your fingertips. You just have to get a little practice with it. Okay. All right. So there we go. So that's that. Now, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick peek at the first chapter? We don't want to waste the whole morning, do we? No, I mean, we do have to go over the syllabus, but we'd also like to get some useful things done too, I hope. And let's see. Yeah, wow, this is a big class, isn't it? Wow. Yes. All right. So now, by the way, if oh, is that right? Apparently there's a fire alarm going off in one of the dorms, and oh my God. All right, well, I'm sorry to hear that. But like I said, this is why one of the reasons why we record the sessions. So I'll just carry on, and we'll take it from there. Obviously, we can't hold anybody responsible for that. So, all right, so let's just at least take a brief look at the first chapter. Now, the first couple of chapters are introductions that are just designed to help us understand what economics is all about before we dive into the more hardcore material. So, for example, if you notice here, chapter 1 is titled Getting Started. So basically what we're going to learn here is that economics ultimately is all about how choices are made in the presence of what we will call scarcity. The bottom line is that the resources that are needed. Oh, yes, go ahead. I'm starting to get used to this hand business.
Yeah, so I just have a question.
Yes.
I'm wondering if the PowerPoints are going to be available to us as well.
Yes, they're all on Moodle right now.
Perfect.
Go to your Moodle account. Yes, my goal is to always make sure that I'm ahead of the game, that the ones you'll need for the next class will always be available. So the first 3 chapters are already there, and I'll continue to add to them. Also, sometimes I have this interesting little device here. Hold on one second. I actually have a tablet here that I can write on the screen. And so I can sometimes insert more notes into these slides. And if I do that, I'll make a copy of those notes available as well. Okay, so in other words, everything that we do here will be available to you in some form or another, so that you don't actually have to miss anything. All right. So, oh yeah, as I started to say, I'll try to keep my eye on this chat box. You know what? it's supposed to change colors when somebody has a chat. Sometimes it doesn't work. So if I don't see your chat within a reasonable length of time, you can feel free to send it again. I'm not ignoring you. It just means I'm trying to get used to how this works. Okay. But anyway, so when you think about all the things that we have, like our cell phones and cars and TVs and houses and all the rest, those all had to be produced with resources. For example, the iPhone has a lot of electronics inside of it. There's actually on the cover of it, if you buy one of these special cases, it's all hard plastic. And this cover that you can get for it is actually glass, apparently. There's a lot of different materials that go into this iPhone. And in fact, Apple has to make arrangements in many different countries to get a single iPhone produced. They have to buy all kinds of materials from all over the world to put one iPhone together. And so it's a very complex process. And it's surprising, honestly, how inexpensive iPhones are considering what kind of effort has to go into making them. Now, here's what we're up against in economics. The resources that we need to produce the things we want are not unlimited, are they? No, in fact, we will say that resources are scarce, meaning that there's not enough for everybody. So in other words, the resources that are available to us have to be allocated somehow. And often that comes through what we will call the price system. So in other words, when you buy things, you're going to spend your money in such a way that you're always going to try to maximize the value of your dollars that you spend. Okay. In other words, nobody, I hope, just randomly buys things without any regard to their value. You know, you don't have a whole lot of money. So when you do spend your money, you have to make sure you're maximizing the value of what you're buying. And so the scarcity comes into where there's just not enough materials in the world to make enough iPhones for everybody. So who does end up with the iPhones? The people who value them the most. Okay, so scarcity is really the fundamental concept in all of economics. The idea that resources are scarce, at least compared to what we want. In other words, people want everything, but resources are scarce, so choices have to be made. So when you go to the store, you can't have everything you want because you don't have enough money, do you? So you have to decide based on what things are the most valuable to you, what you should and should not buy. So ultimately, economics is all about making choices under conditions of scarcity. So yes, exactly, needs versus wants. You have to make a distinction between what do you need and what do you want. You need to eat, you need to pay the rent, okay? You might want an iPhone, but could you survive without it? You could. You might not want to, but if you don't have enough money, if you just barely have enough money for the rent and for your car and for the food and all the rest, you may have to give up the iPhone because it's the least important thing that you use. And the sad reality is you can't have everything that you want. So you have to make decisions. You have to decide what is the most important, and that's how you will allocate your money. And society as a whole has to decide what to do with these scarce resources. I mean, you can't use the same resources for more than one product. For example, the steel that goes into making cars can't also be used to create airplanes. And so decisions have to be made with our scarce resources. Now, in this chapter, we're going to try to understand how to explain what scarcity is and how it forces us to make choices and why economics is ultimately based on scarcity. Now, economics is a social science because it involves human behavior, but it's a very narrow range of human behaviors. Specifically, economics is about market behavior, where we decide how to allocate our resources. And that includes not just your money, but time as well, okay? So we're thinking about how people make decisions. So it is a social science, but it's let's just say, more quantitative than a lot of the other social sciences. Now, at this level, a lot of our concepts can be illustrated very well with graphs. Okay, so we're going to need to draw a lot of graphs, which I think most people enjoy drawing pictures, and it helps you visualize what's happening. But if you get to more advanced levels, these graphs will ultimately be replaced with equations. Okay, does that scare anybody, the thought of equations? Good, all right. But we're not going to have a whole lot of equations here. Mostly graphs, but some basic equations. But if you do want to carry on and study more economics, you will need to become more and more confident in your math skills and especially your statistics skills. Now, by the way, I think they do offer an economics major at this school. Is anybody actually an economics major? You are. Good. Good choice. Fernando, good for you. Justin, yes. Well, then this is just the beginning for you. So I'm just warning you that what's coming ahead is down the road, it'll become a little bit more mathematical, and the statistics, when you get to your first statistics class, remember, virtually everything we do in economics has something to do with statistics. So just remember how important it really is, because ultimately what we're trying to do is explain what happens in the real world. All right, anyway, we also have to understand how the market determines what goods and services are produced and who actually ends up receiving those goods and services. We need to understand how trade-offs are made when we make choices about what to use, how to allocate our resources, and what to buy and sell. We want to understand the distinction between micro and macro, which we've already basically discussed. And finally, we want to start to look at and understand economic graphs, because they can give us so much useful information in a very compact way. Now, interestingly enough, the field of economics itself is relatively new compared to many other disciplines. Realistically, and this is just an aside, let me just mention this. It's not actually here. I just want to mention this as we go along. I want you to remember this name that I'm about to put up here. First of all, the field of economics is relatively new compared to other social sciences. The first economics book was you may have heard about this in your high school classes, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, which was published in 1776. Now, Adam Smith was writing about a lot of specific issues that were unique to the time in which he was writing, but a lot of what he wrote did end up becoming the foundations of what we now know as modern economics. In fact, the word economics didn't really even exist at the time. In fact, Adam Smith himself considered himself to be a philosopher. And he writes this book, and all of a sudden, it sells like crazy. People throughout the world are buying this book at a time when books were actually quite expensive. Like today, we take them for granted. You go to a store and buy a paperback, how much is it going to cost you? $7, $8, $10. Is that a lot of money? No, it is not. Because the technology is so advanced, it's easy to churn out paperback books. In Smith's time, it was a terribly expensive process. And so the fact that his book sold so many copies indicates how important this book turned out to be. And so he is generally considered to be the father of economics as we know it. And a lot of the ideas that we take for granted were actually originally written into this book. So this is the starting point for the field of economics. Now, it wasn't really until the 20th century that we started to make a distinction between microeconomics and macroeconomics. Prior to that, it was all considered to be one field. But in the 20th century, the two fields started to split apart and become separate disciplines in their own right. Okay, so now there's other areas like psychology has obviously been around for a very long time. and some of the other social sciences. So economics is a fairly new field, and but boy, did it ever prove to be important. So anyway, so if you were to make up a list of the people who have influenced society the most, definitely Adam Smith gets up on that list, because like I said, a lot of what he wrote is still taken as our fundamental understanding of economics even to this day. But anyway, so what is scarcity? Scarcity simply means, well, first of all, we know what scarcity means. Sorry, scarcity means we don't have enough of something, but economics is ultimately the study of how resources are allocated to satisfy wants in the presence of scarcity. Here's the problem. There's a conflict here. Resources are limited, wants are unlimited. Now, you all know that that's true. Do you have everything that you want? No, why not? What's holding you back? Why don't you have a castle in Spain? Why don't you have a Ferrari? What's going on? Why don't you have those things? It has something to do with money, doesn't it? Yes. So there's the rub. There's not enough. We want everything, don't we? But there aren't enough resources to produce everything we want. So choices have to be made. You have to make sacrifices. And so the decision-making process is really what economics is all about. How do we decide what things are valuable and what things are not so valuable? So people would like to produce and consume many different goods and services, but the resources are limited. So that means even Jeff Bezos can't have everything he wants. Okay. There must be some limit to how much even he can have. His net wealth, what is it now? What is he up to? Like, I don't even remember. It just keeps growing every day. He's creeping up on 200 billion. Now that's a lot of money, but even he can't have everything. Let's say Jeff wanted to have his own fleet of 747s. I mean, even he would run out of money eventually. So as far as I know, he's still number one. But yeah, look at that guy. Well, why is he so rich? Well, Amazon was an amazing invention. Now, Jeff Bezos started out by selling books out of his garage. I mean, he was a small business owner. And in the early 90s, when all of a sudden people started getting the internet on their own computers, he realized, people might be willing to buy merchandise on this newfangled internet. So he sets up this website which he offers books, and it proves to be crazy popular. And so he starts expanding into other areas, and before you know it, he has an empire there. But at the time, nobody knew if any of this would ever work because the internet was so new. It wasn't clear that people would be willing to actually buy things on the internet. So he got there first with a brilliant idea, and the result, the rest is history. Has anyone here ever not bought something on Amazon? Is there such a person? And especially with the COVID going on, they must have really increased their sales, because all of a sudden it wasn't really feasible to go out and buy things. And before you know it, everything you want, you just put it into your cart and just buy it. And why not? I mean, I need cereal. Well, let's put it in my box and just get it over here. And because they're so fast, and now they have groceries too. But anyway, so what kinds of questions do we try to answer in economics? Well, first of all, what will be produced? Given that there's limited resources, somebody has to decide what to produce. Okay. Now, in a capitalist economy like ours, that decision is made by profit-seeking organizations like Amazon, and they will try to make the goods and services that they believe society values the most. Why do they do this? Because that's how they maximize their profits. Okay, their job is to figure out what we want and make sure that they can produce it for us. Now, what about How will they be produced? Well, again, the point of this is that we can produce goods and services in many different ways, but obviously the point of it is that they need to be made as efficiently as possible so that the businesses who are producing these products can maximize their profits. So the thing about capitalism is it's a very efficient system because everybody has an incentive to produce exactly what people want as efficiently as possible. And ultimately, this is the part where different societies may deviate on the way they look at things. Who gets the goods and services? Well, in a capitalist system, specifically a free market system, goods are allocated to the price system. So that way, the price determines whether it makes sense for you to buy a product or not. And so this way, the people who are most interested in a product will get their hands on it because they will be willing to pay the highest price for it. In a socialist system, the government gets involved with distributing goods and services. And so, in fact, in other words, they may send out people subsidies, or they may interfere in the price system. So this is the part that really probably separates more than anything one political system from the next. How are these goods and services actually distributed? Now, with economics, when we make choices, of course, there have to be trade-offs. In other words, in order to buy more of one product, you have to have less of another. So again, the decision-making process is what we want to be studying. All right, let's see, rational. Now, we're going to make some assumptions about human behavior in economics. We'll start with the word rational. Now, rational can mean a lot of things. In psychology, it means something, it essentially means that if you're rational, your actions make sense. Let's put it that way. Irrational means you do things that don't make sense. I mean, like, for example, if you walk around outside in bare feet in the dead of the winter, that would be considered irrational. But in economics, rational means that we allocate our resources efficiently based on a consideration of costs and benefits. Costs and benefits. Every decision that you make involves costs, but it also produces benefits. So clearly, you want to make sure that for any choice you make, the costs outweigh the benefits. Otherwise, you're behaving irrationally. Okay, so it's like you go to the store to buy food. What are you going to buy? Well, clearly you buy the foods that you like the best, compared based on how much they cost. So you want to get as much good food as possible for the least cost. And by doing so, you're behaving rationally. So we're essentially assuming that everybody is rational in economics, at least with regard to their spending. Opportunity cost. Now, this is actually one of the most important concepts in economics. The idea here is that whenever you make a decision, you're usually giving something up. For example, what if you decide to go to the movies for 2 hours? Can you do anything else during those 2 hours? No. You're giving up the opportunity to, let's say, watch a sporting event on TV, or hang out with your friends, or do something different. So an opportunity cost basically means when you make a choice, the value of what you've given up is known as an opportunity cost. So here's a simple example. Let's say we have a farmer who can grow different crops on his land. If he decides one year to only plant wheat, his opportunity cost includes the value of the barley that he chose not to grow on that same land. Okay, so in other words, I plant the wheat, I'll sell the wheat in the fall and make some money, but I'm giving up the value of the barley that I could have grown on the same land. So the logic here is that whenever we make a decision, we have to take into account the opportunity cost. Now, here's another classic example, going to college. Everybody knows that it's expensive to go to college. You've got to write a big fat check to the school before they let you sign up for your classes, but there's more costs associated with college than you might realize. For example, what if you're a budding musician and you have the opportunity to earn money making recordings instead of going to school. So when you decide to come here for 4 years and study music, you're giving up the opportunity to earn money in those recording sessions. And so that would be defined as an opportunity cost. In other words, you're giving up that potential income by choosing to come to college. And that's referred to as an opportunity cost. The big fat check that you're writing to the school is known as an explicit cost. Okay, that actually comes out of your pocket. An opportunity cost is just, what did you sacrifice when you made this decision? Turns out these opportunity costs are everywhere. Every time you make a decision, there's an opportunity cost involved, and your job is to keep those costs to a minimum. And so, by the way, I mean, so this is one reason why you do ultimately choose to go to college. I mean, what other alternative is there? Studies have shown that people who have college degrees during their lifetime, on average, out earn those who do not by about $1 million. So yes, it's expensive to come to school. Yes, you're giving up a lot of other things, but guess what? Your lifetime earnings should be much higher as a result. And so that's really what this is all about, isn't it? Not to mention the pride of having a college degree. Okay. 20, 30, 40 years ago, now pretty much it's understood that everybody gets a college degree. It's almost like a requirement for anything you do. But it didn't used to be like that. It used to be that people had to make a hard decision. Should I do this or not? Because there were other things they could do without that college degree, and not so much anymore. All right, incentives. This is another incredibly important concept in economics. Uh-oh, I think I've lost track of the chat room. Hold on, everyone. Sorry, I knew this was going to happen. Okay. I just want to see if I missed something really important. Amazon I like Amazon. Even though I'm not a tech person, I use it all the time. Okay, I'm going to say that right up front. I'm a fan of Amazon. It's so useful. In fact, it's gotten to the point where they actually have their own fleet of delivery vans. They're so busy. Oh, now see, we're using symbols again. What is that supposed to mean? 3 pointy things. Does that have a specific meaning?
The 3 pointy thing's supposed to like show above.
Oh,
Probably someone
I see. Wow. See, I'm oh, I see. And what about pluses? There's a bunch of pluses here. What does that mean?
I actually don't know that one.
Pluses. Oh, okay. That somebody just wanted to do pluses. Okay, that's fine. But these pointy things, actually the pointy things have a name, an actual name. I don't know if you're aware of this. Let me just show it to you. There is an actual name for that symbol, and you'll be surprised when you see this. The pointy thing is actually known as a caret, spelled C-A-R-E-T. It means it's used in a lot of software programs for exponentiation. In fact, on your calculator, let me just double check this. No, maybe not this one. Some calculators use that to represent an exponent. But in regular everyday English, you don't see it very often. So, and if you've forgotten, it's on top of the 6. It's the Shift 6 key on a regular keyboard. Okay. You did. You called them carrots. Well, that was kind of cute. I mean, obviously it's spelled differently, but yes, that's why, because that's the actual proper name for that symbol. Yes. So now you know. All right. Oh, is somebody raising their hand? I missed it. Sorry. Did somebody want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, why is it specifically spelled differently?
I
'Cause,
don't know. That's a good question. For that, you know what you can do? If you really want to know, you can, some of these websites, often it has something to do with Greek or Latin. Okay, there you, I figured as much. It comes from the Latin caret, it lacks, or from carere, to lack, to be separated, to be free from. Okay. Oh, because it used to be for, if people were proofreading, they would use that to represent that something's missing. In other words, here's a word that you left out. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Like you could say, let's say you spelled the word carrot incorrectly and somebody puts in this, it means you're missing an R. So that's why it makes sense. Okay, now we get it. You see how this is so interesting. From the Latin caret, it lacks, or to lack, to be separated from. There you go. This, yeah, and if you're ever interested in where a word comes from, the word etymology means the origins of words, basically. So there you go. How do you like that? If you're an English major, this should be doubly interesting to you. All right. Oh, and then, you know, one of the controversial ones, this was forever known as the pound sign. And it somehow got co-opted into something called hashtag. I say no, this is a pound sign. You should not call it a hashtag because that's not correct. But that's my opinion. Okay. This was used to represent number. Like if you said, I have 10, you know, units of my inventory, you could put number 10, for example. All right. Anyway, enough of that fun stuff. Let's get back to this. Incentives. So I was about to say, this is really one of the most important concepts in economics. We're assuming that all rational individuals respond to incentives. Like, here's an example. Suppose that the Starbucks at the school, by the way, did they reopen the Starbucks? I haven't been on that campus in almost 2 years. Does anyone know? The one down by Fort Awesome? Is that open again? Oh my God, how do you not know? Are you not the Starbucks generation? All right, Fernando, what do you know the answer?
It'll be open
I
September
was putting my
16th.
hand down.
Oh, okay. So it will soon enough. Okay. Well, anyway,
like
this is what-
mid-September is opening up.
okay. This is what I was going to, this is an example I wanted to give you. Now, obviously, every one of you has the opportunity to go work there. I mean, I'm sure they hire students all the time. So, of course, though, if you work there, you're going to earn money, but you're going to actually give up time to do other things, as you know. So what if one day Starbucks suddenly said, you know, we're having so much trouble attracting good people that we're going to give you, if you come work for us, $25 an hour. Would that affect your thinking about working at Starbucks? Would that be maybe enough to change your mind about not working there? That's a lot of money, especially for college students. Is anyone here who might think about it seriously if it was $25 an hour? No. Well, well, that means you're doing pretty well, and I'm glad to hear it. What about $100 an hour? Would that do the trick? No. Oh my God. Well, all right. But for some people, maybe not anyone in this room, but some people might say, you know, that's plenty of money for me. That's enough for me to compensate me for the loss of time for other activities. So in other words, incentives basically mean that, like, especially in terms of money, people's behavior will often depend on incentives. Like, for example, if your parents own a house, you may know that the interest that they pay every month on their mortgage is deductible on their taxes. So but that's not true with rent. There's no tax break with rent. So what that does is that if you are thinking about either buying or renting, that tax break might be just enough of a difference to convince you to buy rather than rent. So in other words, and a lot of people will take advantage of this tax break. They'll say, well, you know what? I think I'll buy because if I do, I'll get this tax break, or if I rent, I don't. So they're responding to that incentive that was put into the tax code. And now here's another one. You may not know it, but cigarettes weren't always so horrifically expensive as they are now. About 20 years ago, maybe, the government suddenly added massive new cigarette taxes. What was the point of doing that? To make people stop smoking. Yes, exactly. In other words, the government, sure, they're raising money, but this is a little different. You know, in many cases, the government needs money, obviously, to spend it on things. But in the case of tobacco, the purpose was to say, listen, people, we're not going to make cigarettes illegal, but we're going to make it painful for you to smoke by adding, it was something like $10 a pack. I don't know how it works now because I don't smoke, but 20, 30 years ago, cigarettes were like $2 a pack. What are they now? $12, $14 a pack? This is one case, by the way, where I hope you don't know because I hope you're not smoking. But yeah, it's a lot of money. But the vast majority of that is taxes from the government. And so in the past, this type of tax was referred to as a sin tax. The same thing is true with alcohol. If you buy a bottle of, let's say, tequila from Mexico, there's a lot of taxes that have been imposed on it. That's right. Nobody really fully understood how dangerous smoking really was. So if you buy a bottle of tequila in the United States, it's going to be a lot more money than it would be in Mexico. And it's because of those taxes that the government imposes on it. They're not saying that don't drink, but what they are saying is we'd like to keep it down to a minimum, and we're going to encourage you to drink less by having these taxes. And again, that was often referred to in the press as sin taxes, because their government was hoping that you would not smoke so much and not drink so much. But the idea is that by imposing those kind of taxes, people will, in fact, smoke less and they will drink less because they're responding to the incentives that they've been given. Now, on the other hand, often when you see these new types of electric cars, the government often will give you a tax break if you buy a new electric car. Why would they do that? Like if you buy, I don't know enough about this area, but I do know they make these electric cars that you have to plug them in and they don't use gas. And if you buy a new one, apparently you're eligible for a tax credit. What's the point? Yes, they want you to stop using gas and using electricity. And the more powerful this incentive is, the more people will buy electric cars. That's the whole point. So in economics, we assume that people respond to incentives. That if there is, in fact, some reason, some motivation to do something, you'll probably do it. Or like, imagine if one day they said, you know what, we want you to eat more vegetables, and they gave you a tax break for eating vegetables. What would people do? Well, you know, vegetables, not everybody likes vegetables, but wouldn't you imagine that people would eat, well, all right, not everybody, but some people would go ahead and say, well, there you go. There's my excuse. I'm getting a tax break for eating more vegetables. Yes. So anyway, yes, we're assuming here that people respond to these incentives. Okay, probably a strong assumption, but this is something that a lot of economics is based on. Yes. So in other words, it's not enough to say, please eat your greens. They're saying, we're going to make it worth your while with a little tax break. So a lot of public policy is based on incentives, like I was talking about with cigarette taxes and liquor taxes. And in fact, in some cities, like in London, you know, most major cities, let's say, have a lot of cars on the road and there's a lot of congestion. But in London, they've gone so far as to actually tax people for actually driving into the city. They have cameras set up, and what they'll do is they'll take a picture of your license plate, and every time you drive into London with your car, you're going to have to pay a tax. And so what's the point of that? Well, to encourage you to use public transportation because it's just too crowded. They don't have that in Manhattan yet, but I bet it's coming. And so, again, it's all about incentives. So anyway, we did mention this already, micro versus macro. Micro is looking at individual sectors of the economy, and macro is looking at the big picture. All right, what happened here? And macro focuses on what we will call the big picture. They're both interesting in their own right, but you'll probably ultimately find one to be more interesting than the other. Some people prefer micro, some prefer macro, but they're both very important and they both tie together very nicely. So what kinds of subjects might you run into in this course? Things like how is total output measured? What causes inflation? What influences the level of interest rates? And here's an interesting one. What determines the strength of the dollar? So we'll save that some of these discussions for later in the course, but these are all very interesting topics. And again, these are the things you'll see in the media on a regular basis. And the more you understand, the more you'll get from keeping up with the news. With micro, we're thinking about, how do firms decide how much of a good to produce? How do individuals determine which goods they should consume? How competitive is the market for a good? So we're looking at, individual decision-making units. All right, and then sometimes, they do overlap with each other, of course. We can't perfectly separate each other, but they, we tried to do our best. Okay, so you know what? Oh my God, look how late it got. I'll tell you what, why don't we save this part for next time? We're just going to briefly introduce a few basic types of graphs that you'll see throughout the course, and then we'll carry on from there with chapter 2. So what you should be doing is going to the Moodle and downloading some of these chapters and start reading them in advance so that you know what to expect in each class. And then, of course, if you have questions, you can answer and ask them the next time we meet. And if you want to find out something in between, you can always send me emails. And again, if you do have a problem with coming to class or there's an issue that I should know about, just let me know by email. And I guess for here, all we have to do now is, I can't tell you to go home because you're already home. So we'll knock it off right here, and I'll see you all again on Friday morning. Yes. And you should have your invitation within roughly 24 hours of the class. If I really forget about it, I'll send it out first thing Friday morning. But if you do not get a, yeah, I think it's the first day. We don't have to stay the whole time. I'm hoping that you're going to find this very interesting and relatable to the real world. So yeah, so if you do not get an invitation, you can send me an email and I'll just forward it again. Okay. Oh no, I don't understand. What is a GC? No homework. Just look at the notes. Yes, if you have a question, you can wait till everyone's done. Snap. Oh boy. Are we referring to here to Snapchat?
GC is group chat.
Oh, I get it. You're inviting people to join your Snap group or something. Okay, well, I don't know what it is, so I won't do that. But everybody else, you can feel free to join Brandon's group. I'll tell you what, the one area where I did get myself into technology, I do have Instagram though, and I'm pretty proud of myself. All right. Wow, look at all this. Oh, you have to see my beautiful Instagram. I think that's all you need to know, right? I'm so out of it. But yes, if you go, I think that's all you need to find it. Oh, crap. I'm sorry. No, that's right. I have it. That's correct. Yep, that's the one. All right. So, well, I'm glad to see you're all putting the technology to the best possible uses. Good, good, good. Because we're not in a physical classroom, so you can't talk to each other. Uh-oh, I think, you know what, I blew it here. There we go. I had addressed it to the wrong place. Okay, good. All right, so, oh, you've already looked at it. Well, I thank you. This is kind of interesting. This is a great bonding technique, I guess. No Instagram. No, you've got to get with it. Even I have it. That tells you how easy it must be to use if I have it. Oh, okay. Well, if you had a bad experience, you know. I don't use Twitter because that's no, it's just words. I like the pictures. That's what I like about it. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Okay, so whoever has questions can wait till after they're all done. All right. Yes, thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye. See you Friday. Goodbye, everyone.
Can we ask our questions now?
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah,
Hi, so you can like see my face.
I can
Hi.
now. Yes. Hello.
I wanted to know because you know some classes have like weekly homework due on a specific day. If that
No.
is like the same for your class.
No, what's going to happen is there'll be problem sets for us to work on, but they're just meant for practice. The only things you'll have to do for an actual grade is the exams.
And is there like a specific schedule like at the end of every month or kind of thing?
No, we'll play it by ear. It's based on how many chapters we've covered.
And then we
But-
cover each chapter like together as a class. Like
Yeah.
this.
After we've done a bunch of chapters, we'll do actually before we even have the exam, we have what's called a practice problem set. It's just meant to help us review for the exam, and then I'll post it, and you'll have, let's say, a week to do it.
And it'll be on the Moodle.
Right? Everything's on Moodle. Yes.
Including the textbook, right?
Everything is on Moodle. Yes.
Thank you. Bye. I
bye.
see your Instagram. It's really nice.
Thanks. Anyone else? Oh, Fernando, yes, go ahead.
Hello, Professor Anderson. So I wanted to ask, earlier in the class, you mentioned that the textbook, and I just wanted to ask, for all, I think I put on the chat once, but will all the chapters and like the notes be covered on the textbook itself, or those are like just separate from the textbook?
No, the notes themselves are based on the book. So in other words, when you're reading my chapter one, what I've done is I've taken the book's information and I've sort of created something of my own, but it is based on the book. So in other words,
Okay.
you have the notes. You don't actually
Oh.
have to have the book to study for the course. It's just, but it's since it's a book, it has a lot more material in it that we're going to cover, and you might find that interesting if you're an economics major,
Okay.
but it's not
But you
necessary.
said you said that, right? If we're really serious about it.
So yeah, if you're going to major in economics, you might want to buy it just because it'll cover more chapters than we have time for, and those chapters might show up in intermediate macro, and it's just something you might want to have. It isn't that much money. It's not like $200 like a normal textbook. It's fairly cheap as far as I know, and you might be able to get an online version anyway. But it's not necessary for this class. Although if you're an economics major, you might want to have a copy of it because it will give you a chance to read more of the other topics and some of the more advanced topics as well to get ready for intermediate macro. Because towards the end of the book, it gets much more advanced, and you start to get a feel for what's coming up next in intermediate macro.
All right, thank you.
But it's up to you.
Thanks.
Okay.
I have another question. I noticed, I believe you'll be also teaching my pre-calculus class, and
Oh, is that right?
we also
Well,
be sending another.
that's right. Sometime this afternoon, you'll get an
Yeah.
invitation to that one. Ooh, boy, you're ambitious, aren't you? Both macro and pre-calculus. Man, you're going to have a very busy semester.
But yes, I was. But you mentioned micro course as well, right?
Micro, yeah. A micro will be
Macro
sort of like the
or-
companion to this class. So yes, they will of course require you to do both. If what are you actually majoring in again? Are you majoring in economics?
Yes, I'm gonna be majoring in economics.
Okay, so then they'll require you to take 2 micros and 2 macros, and then there'll be a group of electives to choose from. I don't know how many courses that adds up to. It might be 10, but I'm not sure. And so you have to have the basic micro and macro and basic basic and intermediate micro and macro, and then you can take all these electives to go with it. But as far as this is concerned, the more math and statistics you have, the better off you'll be. So I don't know what they actually require you to take, but it's in your best interest to really pile up on the math and statistics, especially if you want to take this to the next level. Like, let's say you decide to go to graduate school and study it at a more advanced level, then you must have good math skills and good statistics skills. So I applaud your ambition, because I mean, it's not an impossible class. It's just that oh yeah, it is breaking up. Yes. So I just wanted to make sure you know that you will be getting an invitation for pre-calculus tomorrow or tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So see you tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock.
Because I know the people
Yeah.
watching, so I'll
Okay. All right. Bye.
bye.
Anyone else? All right. I guess we'll say goodbye then.